The first part of our assembly is going to be the application pin. Now, this is an example of an inexpensive manual pickup tool that you can get on Amazon and eBay for about $10 to $20. It's very lightweight. It has a manual push button to induce a vacuum for your pickup device. This works okay if you are doing a few parts. The main issue is that if you don't pick up the tool on the first time you push the button here, it's pretty hard to get a good suction on it after that. Again, it's very lightweight, and when you push the button to release, you often get a little bit of a motion when you're placing it. The other thing is this particular tool, the tip, it has no locking mechanism, so the needle is just pressed on. So eventually it works itself loose. This works okay if you're doing a few small batch boards, but it eventually, from a professional perspective, it'll really wear you out quickly. This is an example of an application pin from a unit that has a active vacuum pump. Again, it's extremely lightweight. It's just a metal tube with two pieces glued to the end. The glue doesn't always cover everything, so oftentimes you get a vacuum leak. The end here is like the other one. It's a pressure fit, no locking, so oftentimes it works loose very quickly. It has a small hole here which you cover with your finger to induce or open up the vacuum. It doesn't always work well when you do the release. So you get a little bit of motion when you do that. So my choice to build something, I really wanted to solve some of these issues. I wanted something that had a locking mechanism for the needle. I didn't want to have to deal with any of the seal issues like on this. I didn't want to have any kind of button on the pin itself, because usually when you're pressing that you get some motion, and it's very important to get good placement. The other thing is I wanted something a little more solid, so I had some weight when I'm doing some placement, so I have a good balance. So all of the components that I'd selected for this had that in mind. So I started off with an 1/8 inch NPT 3-inch pipe. This is available at Home Depot, also on Amazon, and pretty much any plumbing supply store. I found this one was a little short. It didn't give me a good feel and balance, so I went online and found this one, which is the same thing. It's 1/8 inch NPT, male on both ends, but it's 4.5 inches long. And this one is very solid. It gives me some length here to hold it like a pin, and it's really well balanced. So that's what I chose to go with for my personal one, is to use this 4.5 inch one. Now we're going to start off by covering both ends with some plumber's tape. We'll put this on clockwise. The plumber's tape helps provide some lubrication to the threads, and it also provides a method for a good solid seal between the threads. Once you got a little bit of that on there, you'll need to cut it. Now this can be torn by hand, but I really recommend a pair of scissors to cut that. So the next step we're going to put on this, which is a female 1/8 inch NPT to 1/8 inch barb. This will be the part that will fit onto our tubing during assembly of the rest of it. Notice that on the parts that we have from other devices here, you'll notice there's no barb on there, so these tend to work loose. I much prefer ones that have a solid barb on it. So now we're just going to screw this on. and you'll need a crescent wrench or a wrench of some type. And you don't have to put it on there extremely tight. You can feel when it tightens up, and as long as it's hand tight and got a good seal, it should be fine. The next step that we want to do here is to add our connection for our needle. Again, we were looking at these type, and they're just pressure fit. So what I wanted to use is something similar, but I wanted to use with a locking mechanism. This particular type of locking mechanism is called a lure lock, and all the popular needles and application needles that you can buy have lure locks on them. And so this basically twists in and locks in place into the tip, and it's very solid. And so this particular one I could only find in a lure lock with a male 1/8" NPT. Couldn't find a female one. So in order to connect these two together, I would need a coupler. And so I got a 1/8" NPT female to female coupler to put on there. Early on in my testing, one of my ideas was to get some single-use syringes and cut the end off. This is a 3cc, which has almost the same identical diameter as an 1/8" NPT pipe. So I took an X-Acto knife, cut the end off, and then used a threader here to thread the internal on there. Now this worked really well for a month, maybe 2 months, but the lure lock on this, because these are intended as single-use syringes, was not built very sturdy, and it began to work loose, and so it just didn't last more than a month or two of continuous usage. So I discarded that idea, but it's still one that if you weren't looking to reduce cost of the assembly, that's one thing that you can do. Now back to our assembly here, we're going to put our coupler on to the pipe here and tighten it down. And then we're going to put on some plumber's tape to the lure lock. Now I talked to several different people, and because this particular lure lock is made from nylon, they said it really wasn't absolutely necessary to use this to lubricate the threads because of the difference between the metal and the nylon. But they did recommend using the plumber's tape to help provide a good solid seal between the threads. So we're going to go ahead and put some on. And I hand tighten it here, and then again just use my crescent wrench to make sure it's secure. So there we have it. That's our pin applicator. One of the things that I did notice after I had it assembled and everything working was that it was a little rough on the hands to use for a little bit of time period. I experimented with using some foam grips that you would normally use with pens or pencils, but they didn't really work well around the 1/8" NPT pipe. What I did find was this grip tape that's a sports tape. You can purchase this on Amazon and sports stores like that, but it just pulls apart and you can wrap it around, and as you wrap it, it locks into place. So what I did was just put some of that around the base, and you just pull it tight, and as you pull it tight, it locks into place. And just put enough on there to soften your grip. And there we have it. It's a real soft, firm grip. It's comfortable, it's usable, it's well balanced back and forth. You've got your lure lock here at the tip. easily replaceable and good and solid. Now for our next section, we'll be assembling the solenoid and the electronics, and then from there we'll look at the vacuum pump and doing the assembly, and then one more we'll look at some accessories to go with your tools.